Some songs come together quickly, others take a bit more figuring out. The one we are going to talk about today started as two separate tracks, and for a long time they were a nightmare to combine. This episode is for you if you want to understand how bands turn unfinished fragments into a track that finally clicks. I'm Kieron Banerji and this is The Hardest Part. It's the show where we go inside the making of the hardest songs artists have ever had to write. I joined Reese and Sid from Ulrika Spacek in their studio to break down weights and measures, the track that they told me was the hardest to finish on their record Expo. It began as two distinct pieces. One was a heavy fuzz section, the other was inspired by that early 2010s London sound of samplers and post-dubstep textures. Think Mount Kimby and James Blake. Now for a long time they didn't fit, and making it work meant changing tempo, shifting pitch, and committing to the contrast between the parts. In our conversation they get into the nuts and bolts, building from a drum-led sample bank and reworking MIDI so it didn't feel too digital or too analog. Here's my conversation with Reese and Sid from Ulrika Spacek.
This song came from two distinct ideas that were for a long time just impossible to put together, and they just kind of sat by themselves, and it was a nightmare basically. Yeah. And I think every song, every album, has a song that is the one that is the hardest to finish, and providing you're happy with it at the end, it can be something that becomes quite meaningful for the band, isn't it? Even if the audience doesn't like it, but for you as a group, you've accomplished something together.
You said that this is one of the tracks which is one of your favourites on the record, right? But
Very
one
so.
that you're a bit concerned that maybe fans won't connect with it in the same way?
I wouldn't be surprised if people don't like it.
Yeah. Why is that?
It just sounds pretty fresh for us. I think it draws on different influences. When you make an album, you never know what people are going to like, and that's it's fun to see on the other side, what songs people connect with. On a past EP, we had a song called Freudian Slip that has now become one of our biggest songs, and I don't think any of us thought that would be...
No, definitely not.
It's just funny how some songs just over time, they just find their place in the future world, And for us, in our context, this song feels quite futuristic for us. But
well, let's unpack the process a little bit. So, two very distinct ideas. Maybe we could break down the DNA of each of them. So, I don't know which one you want to start with first.
The song started with a kind of very heavy fuzz part that now becomes the middle eight of the song. I don't know, it was very strange because it sounded almost like a James Bond soundtrack or something, very grand, and then that was built on a skip rhythm, which was just kind of awful as well. I don't know, but it just sat like that in a 6/8 rhythm basically, and then on a separate occasion we had something in 4/4 that was more, I don't know, a little bit more reminiscent of kind of early 2010 London. I don't know, people called it post dubstep, but Mount Kimby and James Blake sort of.
Okay.
Lots of samplers and stuff. We had to do a bit of maths to figure out that 6/8 and 4/4, things do work on top of each other. It just sort of syncopates. But to do that, we had to change tempos, we had to change pitch to make it into one song, and it was just a moment when we kind of eventually put it together, and it felt weird and wrong, but also very right, and that's the moment we knew we were kind of on a home straight.
Tell me a little bit about your writing process and your creative process when you're in the studio. These two ideas, do you do all the songwriting together? Is it two people or a section of people bringing different ideas into the room? How do you work on tracks? Like
I said, we've always worked quite collagey, and on this album we went one step further in the sense that we made a sample bank. So, I live in Stockholm, these guys in London, so we're not really in the room jamming, and we've never really been a jam band, to be honest. Yeah. I think Callum was great, wasn't he, in the sense of forcing us to contribute little snippets.
Yeah, so Callum, the drummer, spent like 2 or 3 sessions just by himself to just record loads of drum bits, drum ideas that he had, and put it all in a folder for us all to kind of like start working on ideas. And it was very inspiring. A lot of them were very inspiring. That really helped us to kind of start from drums, really, weirdly enough, right?
That's always been the case, in the sense all the albums, I mean, from my personal opinion, like, I feel like I'm a drummer at heart, you know. The first instrument I ever, or when I listened to music when I was a kid, it was like the drums. So on past albums, we would like write to a drum beat, but it would often be like a 4/4, I don't know, like omnichord drum machine or something. But Callum obviously was in a place where he was coming up with a lot more sort of syncopated ideas, and I think that just informed. Yeah, and then we ended up just like putting a lot of kind of glitchy sampling and stuff on it.
Because I guess we had this moment where on the last US tour we did, when we were in the process of finishing the album, we already had kind of like half the songs done, and we started to listen to a lot of different things that we thought were a bit of a departure from what we've done before, but still remained very linked to what we like and what we try to put in the other albums as well. And because I think there's an evolution. Every single album, including the EP, is evolving towards something else. I think we're not very stagnant in that sense.
And we talk about music a lot.
Exactly,
you know,
that's the thing. And there was a bit of a moment where we all kind of came to the realization that we all liked a certain type of electronic music, or more like experimental process or production techniques. And I think Weight and Measures is probably the one that shows that the most out of all of them.
It wasn't that we loved the song from the start, actually. It was probably one of the more talk points, you know?
Yeah. So you talked about the sort of collective musical interest of the band. Yeah, what were you listening to at the time? What were your inspirations?
I don't know, we had that playlist that we listened to in the van on tour.
Yeah.
And everyone would keep on adding things as we went along, and I think it kind of informed a common aesthetic.
Yeah, and for us, music, even though I say we talk about music a lot, I mean, also by sharing music, I mean, that's how you make your own musical language as a group. So sometimes, you know, you can add a song to a shared playlist and you don't even talk about it, but it's, you know, something that you like about it can hopefully infiltrate someone else's mind on their own terms, you know, and they find it their own way. I guess we do listen to a lot of experimental music. We were listening to more IDM, you know, a lot of like late 90s kind of Warp record stuff. For us, we think we like interesting music, but that's just our taste.
Yeah.
But I think something that is, you know, has been a common thread. We do like trippy music, you know.
Yeah.
And for a long time, or there was a period of time where like guitar music was doing great trippy music, but I think we've kind of just explored other avenues of finding trippy music.
You mentioned the production techniques there. I'd love to double click on those because that's something that our audience always love to hear about. Is maybe you could go into those a little bit.
I guess it's kind of started from sampling a couple of things, like sampling ourselves and then trying to recreate them live. So we had like different iterations of the track, especially the first third of the track. I think that's what took us the longest, is to find the right sound, because we really didn't want it to sound digital, but we also didn't want it to sound not digital, if you see what I mean. I think like
wasn't
that
it
16-bit thing.
The start of the track, those sounds, it was kind of written on a MIDI keyboard with just like the Logic.
Yeah.
So it had a vibe to it, but it was like we were not satisfied with that.
Yeah.
And it took us a long time to then get something that, which is always the hardest thing, you know,
Yeah, 'cause
keeps
then
the essence of the original.
We tried to replace it first, because that was the first point of call. Was like, okay, well, this is obviously MIDI, and it doesn't really satisfy what we want to do. Even if we tried to chuck plugins at it and stuff, it wasn't quite right.
We
It
tried
was all right.
filtering, we tried
loads of
saturation.
things. Exactly. And that's hence why I think this song was kind of difficult, is because it didn't come to us in a way that felt instant. We knew where we wanted to go, but we didn't really know how to get there, really, as a group, because some of us had visions, like Callum and yourself, you had a very strong vision for it. And when it came for me to like try and put some bits on it, I was like, I'm not quite sure how to contribute to it.
Yeah.
I can kind of see where we can take this, but I also didn't know how to take it there.
Yeah.
And so then we tried to, so going back onto that intro sound, we tried to just completely get rid of the MIDI file and recreate it with analog synthesizers and stuff. But that then took it into a place that wasn't quite where the song was.
Yeah.
It was a bit too analog. It was lacking that directness that you get from digital emulations and things like that. So then we ended up doing a blend of it. And I think you might have sampled something. You might have sampled something and then played that back.
On some sample pack, I basically wanted this kind of, I don't even know what you would call them, but like the kind of autotune-y sample pad, like 90s sort of thing. And then we layered that with like the OB6, so Joe playing it. So I'm doing the sample pads, Joe's doing the keyboard and stuff. So there's many layers of that. And then we ended up doing saturation. But I feel it's like this song, whether it's good or whether anyone likes it, I mean, for us, it was definitely kind of at the limit of our expertise, if you know what I mean, at the moment. Like we really were, pushing ourselves. Yeah, for instance, with Callum with the drum beat, for instance, it's like, we had the drum beat, but then when it came back to him, because, things go back and forth all the time, it's the same drum beat, but rather than starting on the 1, the drum's starting on the 2. So it's like everything was kind of interlocking, but in a weird way. And I can see why, sometimes when you hadn't made a contribution yet, like how it was hard to jump in there.
Yeah. We had this moment where I feel like we were trying to kind of make it fit within the album, in the sense that we had a certain frame within which we were working. So it being the OB6 or like electric bass or things like that. And in the end, for instance, I think things unlocked when we decided to go with double bass rather than electric bass. Where it's like a bit of a nod to like a brown paper bag or things like that, when we're like, okay, that kind of makes sense. It kind of fits into this, but it's more of a nod rather than like try and replicate something. And that took quite a lot of, I think it's more about thinking about the song rather than try to chuck things at the song. And that's why that one took a bit longer, I think, for us all to find a place for it. Because it required us to think about it way more rather than be quite instinctive with it.
One of the things that always comes out really naturally when we have these conversations on the show is creative blocks. It's often like creeps its way into a lot of the stories of why a song has been so hard to complete or get over the finish line. I'd really love to know how you as songwriters and as a band approach those times when things aren't flowing so well.
I mean, it's very boring to say, but like sometimes just go into the projects and bounce, just be in the project, just like clean your project, like, and it's funny, like how if
Colour
you commit,
all the tracks.
You just commit 1 hour of like doing some dusting and stuff like that and have no expectations of writing something. I mean, the longer you spend with something, I mean, usually you get rewarded. I think the worst stage you can be in is when you're kind of just contemplating in your mind and you've got a block, but you're not actually trying or doing anything, because then that's when it carries on.
I guess also what was interesting with this album in particular is that it was maybe one or two of us might have writer's block for one song, but then it's 5 minds on it, in the sense that if someone would be blocked with something, someone else might be inspired by to do a new part on it, or like have a new take on something, and then that would then inspire someone else to get out of their writer's block. If you see what I mean. So that's also where we benefited from having a bit of time in our own spaces, like each and every one of us, because we're all kind of able to do things remotely.
Yeah, and also we're in a good place in the sense, like, we're long beyond the days of here's the drummer, you play drums, bass plays the bass, you know. That idea of the collective mind, I mean, that really is the thing that is our strength, you know. So sometimes it doesn't mean everyone plays on every song, on every moment, you know. As long as you're, you know, we always feel involved as a group, so.
Yeah, because especially for that song, you and Callum, if I'm not wrong, you and Callum carried quite a lot of the initial creative input.
Well, we had the drums,
Yeah, to a point where then when we tried to come in the other three, which didn't really happen with any of the other songs, the other three were like, okay, this is great, this is very interesting, but also you took it to a place that was slightly different from what we've been used to. So we had to relearn how to approach, how to bring something to something that was already kind of advanced. And that's also why it was a bit challenging, but for the best. I think it really helped us also to kind of get an idea of how we would want to play things live, and because as Reese was saying, it's not about who's playing what in the band, it's more like who's bringing what. It doesn't matter which instrument or anything like that. And I think that was part of the challenge with that song, is that you and Callum did a really good job at bringing it quite far.
I think, the biggest challenge of the song as well was just getting it off the ground, really. It was just very hard to put those ideas together. I mean, maybe not hard for other people, but hard for, like, I don't know. I really don't like to get into the, you know, when a band often is talking about time signatures and stuff, it's usually a bad sign, you know, I think. But
we don't really even know anyway.
I mean, actually, come to think of it, I mean, I know Joe will say the same, because I remember we grew up together. There was like a Nathan Fake song, long time ago, 6/8, and then suddenly like a 4 thing comes in, and I just remember us being like, oh wow, it's like 4 and 6/8, you know. And it's something quite nice actually about the album we've made this time, is like, in a strange way, I think it really reminds me of like kind of what musically you kind of wanted to do when you were like 14 or something. So I think, you know, in the early 2000s, you know, I do think like rock bands and electronics and stuff it was quite a good place. Like, so yeah, it's been quite fun. And going back to like, we've obviously improved as producers and stuff, so
I think
we can do what we want to.
Yeah, this kind of shows it in a way. That
articulate ideas slightly better.
Yeah, and also like get out of our comfort zone, even as a 5-piece working on a song. I think we, again, as I was saying, there was a challenge at some point, and it was very interesting for us. It really helped us understand what we are a bit more, and I think that song kind of helped us with that.
And it was fun, you know. It's like when David Bowie said, like, you know you're in a good place when you're like slightly a bit too deep into the water. But you can, as long as you can just touch your toes. And when you're in that kind of area, when you feel like it's exciting and you don't really know what you're doing, I think that song kind of had that, which why you know, ultimately it was fun. And it's actually one of the few songs as well where, despite all of the other complications, I mean, lyrically and vocally, it was kind of opposite to the others, so it actually came out very quick and quite stream of consciousness. I didn't think too much about what I was saying. And that was really nice, to basically have this long kind of process of details and stuff, but then essentially, I mean, I remember it didn't have a chorus for a long time, and then, you know, sometimes these things just come down to like a second, you know, when you're supposed to leave the house and you've just got a guitar, and the chorus and the vocals just came. And I think once we knew we had a chorus, I think everybody kind of, that point, I think everybody then was a bit more on board with the idea, I think.
Yeah.
And then you had that bass thing that, you know, walks down and stuff. And then at that point, I think we were feeling happier about it.
Yeah. And similarly, I think when it came to mixing, I think it's kind of a good testament as if the song was finished enough or not. And this song in particular was almost like stream of consciousness that you had with the lyrics. It's very similar in the mixing stage. It came together very quickly, very easily.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I finished all these interviews with the same question, and it comes from this place where an artist brought out a new record and everyone was telling me it was really good, artists I like. I listened to the record and I didn't really like any of the songs on there. And someone was like, no, you have to go listen to that specific song. I went and listened to it, hated that one more than the rest of them, to be fair. And then straight afterwards I heard an interview with the lead singer bringing out these like really nuanced things to listen out to in his vocal performance and a few of the lyrics, which like really articulated the meaning of what the song was about. And then it became my favourite song of theirs the minute I listened to it after that. So our audience are about to hear the track in full, and I think it's so special to have an artist's insight as a listener to know all these little nuanced things to listen out for. So for our listeners, is there anything you could point out to them right now that's going to change the way they're going to experience this song?
I mean, I can tell a little secret detail in that Joe's son sings a line on it.
Right. Okay.
I don't think that's going to. I don't think that's going to change whether you like it or not. But I'd like to think that in all of in our music, we have a lot of Foley sounds and a lot of like hidden ghosts that it sometimes takes repeated listens to hear.
Yeah, I was actually going to say that, but there's something else that I personally think really makes the song to me. It's weirdly enough, it's the horn parts that is coming in towards the end of the song. I think it really ties it all together because there's this certain human nature to it, because it's played very quietly. There's almost a whisper.
It sounds a bit apocalyptic, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah. And I think it really helps understanding the song for what it is. It's kind of like sometimes it's only at the end of a movie where you understand the rest of the movie.
Right.
And to me, that part really helps cementing the voicing that's been going on for the whole of the song.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like if people haven't noticed it, it sounds a bit like, when a train is slamming on its brakes and doing the horn. So it sounds a bit like that, yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on The Hardest Part.
Thanks very much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for tuning in to The Hardest Part. If you enjoyed the show, please do rate and review, and you can check out our entire back catalogue of interviews, features and sessions on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. We're on all major streaming platforms. We'll catch you next time.